We're going to be talking. This is great to see, by the way. Look, when you're finished, by the way, this is what happens. You're going to get, mobbed.
So we should go this way.
Yeah, go that way. If you want a quick exit, go off that way. No, you're right. So we're going to be talking about building a resilient supply chain. Would you agree with me that before COVID, before lockdown, people hardly ever mentioned supply chain? It kind of just happened. Would that be fair to say, Nicolas?
I think it was. I don't know.
Oh, you need a mic. There you go. There should be another one around there somewhere. Yeah, there you go.
So I think it was in the mind share, but quite low, but it was all about optimizing, making it as low cost as possible, as predictable as possible.
Yeah.
It wasn't prepared for anything like COVID.
Okay. Sorry, what I should have also done is tell us what you do, Nicolas, because I think a lot of people in the room be interested, because anybody who's involved in anything to do with investment or a venture firm, yes. People's ears prick up. So tell them what you do.
Thank you, Roger. So my name is Nicolas Sauvage. I'm the president of TDK Ventures. We are the corporate VC arm of the tech firm TDK. Who in the audience, I'm going to do a Roger move, who in the audience remembers the TDK brand? Ooh, very
that's good.
Nice.
Yeah,
very
that's nice.
Now you can imagine we moved on from the cassette business and now we are in battery, power solutions, passive components, electronic components. And so all of this means that we are looking at what could be these big mega trends, including mobility, but industrial, renewable energy, clean tech. And so when we think about supply chain, we're really looking at what does it mean, including from a critical material supply. And this is becoming top of the mind for everyone today.
Before I come to the rest of our panel, can I just say, going back to that TDK cassette thing, TDK C60 cassette, yeah, great. C90 cassette, great. C120, that was never a good idea. The reel was just too fat to sit inside the cassette, wasn't it?
You just use a pen.
Who has ever shoved a pencil, this will show the audience, into a cassette and moved it around? Yeah, honestly, younger people, some of this technology that's been and gone, you don't know what you've missed. Seriously, the fun you could have with a cassette, unscrewing it, the bit where it all spooled into the cassette, I mean, seriously. Sorry, Sungkwon, you're too young. Did you ever have a cassette player?
When I was a kid, yes.
Oh, you did? All right. Maybe you're more mature than I thought.
Maybe his parents.
Yeah, yes, it could be. So, LG Tech Ventures, here you go. Here's another one. You should all be paying attention here. Please give us an intro as to who you are and what you do, Sungkwon.
My name is Sungkwon Kang. I'm an investment director with LG Tech Ventures. LG Technology Ventures is a corporate VC, venture capital arm of the entire LG group. You probably know LG by its appliances and televisions, but LG has many different businesses, including chemicals, local telco, also electronics modules producers. So we manage the investments for the entire LG group.
Thank you. Okay, Carlos, you asked me earlier before we kind of got together, come on stage earlier today. Please, can we talk about trucks and commercial vehicles, not cars? For obvious reasons, you're Renault Trucks. So would you like to do your intro, please?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Carlos Rodrigues. I'm the managing director for Renault Trucks UK and Ireland businesses. And I kind of feel a bit like the dinosaur. Everyone is a bit of the tech and everything, but we're actually, guys, today, putting on the road the commercial vehicles which deliver the goods that Patrick was referring to before and making sure that everyone got his parcel and everything else. And I'm on this panel of the supply chain. I'm on the downstream of it. I'm making sure that vehicles are always in operation. Uptime is critical for customers like Patrick. He mentioned it before. So, and to your question about, when COVID struck, everyone realized how important it was to get the trucks around. We were the only thing moving around. And I still remember that letter from the government saying that I was part of an essential business, making sure the trucks were on the road.
Yeah.
So it is how essential we are and how essential our business is in this transformation to make sure that customers are actually confident that we can do the transition to battery electric vehicles or zero tailpipe vehicles, but also making sure that we can maintain them and keep them on the road.
Yeah.
Because you guys want your parcel next day on electric.
You allude to that moment. I'm sorry to keep mentioning COVID, because I know for all of us it's a bit like, can we just forget it? We know it happened. It's gone. But it must have been, for a lot of people, truck drivers especially, a wonderful time to drive on the roads, because there's no one there. Everyone was in lockdown. It must have been they must have thought, well, let's just keep this going. It must have been quite a nice time for people, ironically, of course. So there you are. It just shows in life, not everything's bad. There's always something good to be found in any situation. So we're going to talk about resilience in supply chain, building a resilient supply chain, which inevitably is going to, or should talk about, carbon content. Where do we make stuff? How is it made? How does it move? Where does it get here? Price, obviously. Price is always a fundamental. Availability, and I'd like to get into a few details on that. And inevitably, and I know I said earlier on the first panel, can't talk about politics, but we should talk about geopolitics, because it's part of everybody's life now. We saw that last week when the EU decided to impose tariffs on Chinese products. Quite significant, depending upon who you are and what you think. That, in a sense, was inevitable. We saw that in America a few months ago, where there was a 100% tariff on Chinese vehicles. But of course, here's the reality check. What is a vehicle? It's a bill of materials. It's made of a lot of different components, and those components are made in various parts of the world. So the unintended consequence, perhaps, and I'd like to ask you about this, Nicolas, of what the tariff actions might now have, and I don't want to make this about China, I want to make this about the world and supply chains. What might happen now if we start to see increased levels of tariffs, not just on vehicles, but on batteries, on other components within the supply chain? What might that start doing that's going to slow down the march towards electrification?
Well, first, I think we have to remember that tariff is a cost to the local customer and consumer. So they are the local ones who are paying for it. What I was found interesting about last week is that different OEMs have different tariff percentage. I thought that was quite interesting to see. I don't think it's going to slow down in any way the path of electrification. I think that is happening. What I find maybe interesting is whether it's going to create more incentive for hybrid cars, which, if we think about it from a supply chain, but also from the size of the batteries, and I think your previous panel was very interesting about the cost of charging and maybe topping up a little bit and afterwards. Yeah. Most of our journeys are short, and that's where you want to be electric. But for long journeys, you really need to have a massive battery that you don't use often. And so I thought in the previous panel it was interesting to have most people, 95% use a smaller battery pack if they can choose, and then they upgrade. I think that's actually an alternative to hybrids, which I think is interesting.
Yes, yeah. Now, LG, now, I hope I'm not wrong in this. When you said LG was a conglomerate, it's a big organization. That includes the battery company, of course. So where might this work then if your batteries, LG batteries, go into various EVs around the world? What's your sense of how the supply chain might be impacted by this, increase of tariffs, this kind of decoupling from globalization? It feels like that's what's happening. I mean, I might be wrong, but.
Right. So I guess the pressure is on the price, the costs.
Yeah.
Having 60 to 70% of the BOM cost of an electric vehicle coming from the battery itself.
Yep.
We try to cut the costs, and obviously the Chinese LFP or any other battery technologies are putting pressure on our lithium-ion batteries that we produce. And that is the reason why when we explore new technologies, we already have 250 gigawatt hour worth of scale of battery factories in the next, including all the to be completed factories in the next few years. And we cannot really change the whole thing at the same time. So we were looking for a tack-on, add-on technologies that can be a drop-in solution and really drop the price. For example, it could be serendipitous discovery, or it could be by design. But when we met one company that works on continuous supercritical hydrothermal process for producing single crystal product, they found a way to really skip some of the processes that from the brine lithium chloride to the final product form of lithium for the battery. Instead of shipping from the brine sources to all the way to China and doing all the processes and adding cost, their technology somehow not only produces the single crystals that we want, but serendipitously it can skip many of the processes and the steps that's involved with the Chinese production and processes. So those are the types of things that we look for, and those are the opportunistic investment opportunities for us.
Yeah, and they are. And I think, thank you, that is a really interesting run through. And again, just as we heard in the first panel, there is so much innovation, and innovation happening fast, that is both making the attraction of EVs and the journey towards price parity, ever closer. You can hear that. But someone has to make the investment. Sometimes people like yourself, your organizations, have to be bold and brave in, well, it's by definition taking risk. Some of them won't pay off. You'll give someone 10 million and they'll lose 10 million, and there'll be a very severe meeting somewhere, won't there? Well, just out of interest. Yeah, just out of interest, if I hope this isn't too personal, but if you vouch for a particular company and you go through the due diligence, and let's just pick a number. Say you give them 10 million, and then within a couple of years, it just all falls flat and fails. What's that like in the company? I mean, you sit there because it's nice to celebrate success, but what happens when it's a failure? What's that look like?
That feels personal.
Sorry. No, just...
No. I think first we have to understand venture capital is all about betting into a better future. We're looking at what an ideal state of the future should be like, and we're trying to backcast to what's missing. We will sometimes get it wrong, but the intent is to build a better future. And venture capital is designed to be very risky. There is a very high likelihood of failure, but if it does succeed, we look at how big that can get. And so for us, a perfect venture capital type of investment is maybe 50% chance it will go to zero within 2-3 years, but maybe a few percentage points could be 100 times the outcome or 1,000 times the outcome. We invested in a company called Type 1 Energy, developing nuclear fusion. I think everyone in the audience will agree. Nuclear fusion is not easy, very unlikely to succeed so quickly.
Yeah.
But if it does work, we are going to end up with continuous renewable energy for everyone at very low cost, at which point we can have electrification for all our mobility instantaneously. We can have local energy supplied. We don't need to think about supply chain the same way as today.
Yeah.
That's venture capital.
Yeah, got it. So it's reverse engineering, hedging your bets, and actually learning from your mistakes. And it's good to make mistakes. It's good to have failures. It's not at the time. I worked for a few startups that have failed, and it's horrible. That gut-wrenching feeling when they call in the receivers and you have to tell people, they're getting a few £100 and they go home and they haven't got a job anymore. It's awful. However, if you learn from it, I was at a company called Moderator that failed for lots of reasons, and I have to accept one of the reasons was me. I wasn't good enough at the job as sales director. I can argue all the things that, were external factors, but when I reflect on what I didn't do there, I wasn't good enough. I spent too much time with people who were never going to buy a van anyway. That was foolish. I should have been more ruthless and targeted and focused. So thank you for that. And sorry to put you on the spot.
No, but I think the keyword foolish is important.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are looking at entrepreneurs who have this sense of optimism, this sense of purpose, this sense of urgency, and we bet on them.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it's like Ascend Elements. When we invested in the company, there were 10 people and all VCs were challenged to think it sounds too good to be true. Now it's a battery recycling or upcycling company. which is a unicorn at $1.6 billion valuation, 400 plus people. So we have successes as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you alluded to something there. Stay young, stay foolish. Hands up if you know who famously said that. I know I just did, but it wasn't you know. It was Steve Jobs. And so I'm looking around at a few people I know in the audience who are young entrepreneurs and got their own businesses. Yeah, stay young and stay foolish. And you know, if you have that courage and determination and you get to know people with the money, you will be successful. You'll definitely get in a queue, you two. Carlos, I'd like to talk about some practical reality. A company like Renault Trucks, make combustion engine vehicles. You do them very well. Lots of people buy them. And as we shift to electrification and your supply chain starts to be then, for obviously, as you know, Sungkwon was talking about, the batteries, motors, inverters, power, all the other stuff. How are you going to manage to keep the supply chain of combustion engine parts, the bill of material parts, how are you going to help those key suppliers stay viable? Because if your volumes start coming down with combustion and going up with EV, which is what we all hope, doesn't that make them vulnerable, and isn't that going to be a problem?
Well, a few points to this, Roger. The first is it's going to be a gradual transformation. From our perspective, our SBTi targets and our net zero plan is to become net zero by 2040, which is when at that point all our products will be offered in either a BEV, zero tailpipe emission, and even we will still have at that point ICE traditional engines. ICE engines will continue to exist for a long time still. They will just be in certain parts of the world using hydrogen as a gas instead of methane as we use today, or biodiesel or biogas, but limited, because we strongly believe that battery electric vehicles and to a certain extent is going to be the lion's share. So first, it's a gradual transition into moving away from the traditional combustion engine. The second element, I'm sorry, we are a 125-year-old company. That's what we do. Managing supply chain, we've got fantastic teams at the group level. They are, even today, constantly monitoring our group purchasing teams, which are absolutely phenomenal. That's what they do, monitoring tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. It's happening all the time. We've just had the worst crisis ever in shortages in supplies of the past 3 years through the shortage of components that we will recognize. That's just what we do. So we will continue to work very closely with all our partners, all our suppliers, our group purchasing teams will continue to do the same as they do today, making sure we can protect the customers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, making sure we can deliver the parts, the supply, and making sure we can repair the trucks and keeping them on the road. That's what we do.
Right. Just out of interest, who works in supply chain in some form of fashion, either in a tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a few of you. Hands up if you have worked in supply chain in any place in the past and don't anymore. A few more than that. I can't ask everybody this question, but I'm intrigued to know, not everyone's personal journey is interesting, but why you're not there now would always be interesting. So, again, looking at what we've learned from what went on during COVID, the tightness, the challenge on globalization, and now the quest towards having not just electric vehicles, but making those electric vehicles and the components that go in them, the bill of materials, as low carbon as possible. How can we square that circle? Because at the moment, as you said, Carlos, you've got very sophisticated technology and teams working on managing the global ecosystem of supply chain, tier 1s, all of that stuff. Now, that's predicated on availability, the things we talked about, availability, price, inevitably geopolitics. But what about carbon content? How do you all see, any of you can answer this, how do you all see us finding a way of reducing carbon whilst at the same time still getting those other factors achieved? Sungkwon.
So one of the things that we try to do is to lengthen the life cycle of batteries as much as possible. And one thing that we've seen with our portfolio company, it's called Element Energy. So LG had to recall 150,000 vehicle fleet of Chevy Bolt battery recall. That was like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And
I didn't want to mention that. Thank you for doing that, because I wasn't going to say it.
And without Element Energy, we would have scrapped maybe 80 or 90% of those into landfill. But Element Energy intervened, and they provided their idea. We're going to buy all of your batteries, recalled batteries, and repurpose those as a battery energy ESS system. So they use their battery management system to manage or reuse this recalled batteries. So essentially, they created this extra step before end of life to going to recyclers, repurposing it and extend the life of the end of life batteries to ESS systems.
Right. Wow. And I think that's highly credible of you, both as an individual, as a company, to raise a negative scenario that was turned into a positive situation. So hats off to you for that. By the way, I normally wear a cowboy hat. I would have taken it off at that point, but I forgot it today. You wanted to say something on this, Nicolas?
Yeah, I was going to react. We just announced TDK, a new battery that is 100 times longer charge. So think about all your small devices like your EarPod. Rather than charging them every day, it would be 4 times a year. So,
what?
Yes, 100
What chemistry
times.
is that? What's that?
You have to check our press release. But this is really significant. Now, back to your question about what we can do better. I think one thing we can do is right-size our mobility. I talked a little bit about smaller batteries, but for example, we invested in a company called Faction, which is all about delivering your pizza or your chicken fillet or whatever it is. It's a 3-wheeler, it's a much smaller batteries, and it does all these small routes very, very quickly. We invested in another company, that was my very first investment, called Starship in Estonia. These tiny robots that also deliver groceries all around the city. This is much smaller, this is very clean. You don't need a 2-ton vehicles to deliver stuff to you.
Oh, don't tell Carlos that. Yeah.
You do need trucks to deliver long things over long distance.
Yeah.
I think we all agree with this. Right sizing is what it is that you need to have delivered and what is the cleanest way to do it. And I'm sure Carlos has a roadmap to do that as well.
Yeah.
But if it's to deliver a pizza, sorry, not a truck, not a 2-ton vehicle.
I'm with you. You've got a cool job, haven't you? You know,
I have the coolest job.
Yeah, no, you do. I think if you're lucky enough to be in any work where you've got a range of things that you do, you know, it's eclectic. Eclectic and electric. I've got a podcast called that, by the way. I might want you guys to come on that, because I'm learning a lot here. So in that regard, Carlos, you mentioned, you know, and it's good to hear you shout out your teams in the way that you did, but how much now of new technology is aiding and supporting that? Like anything to do with AI, which I know is a huge term, you know, covers a lot of things, AI, blockchain, all these things. Is there much innovation now in the management of supply chains to get the part in the right place at the right time, you know, in the right fashion?
I think it's a constant development. Today we have systems which are monitoring constantly the stock of our front lines, making sure again that we have always the right part at the right place at the right moments.
Yep.
You know, we have peak rates of 99% next day, making sure we have the part. And if you compare that, the commercial world with the car world, you know, if you have a van and you call one of my dealerships in the UK, you'll probably, because we're a commercial organization, you'll probably get an appointment tomorrow or the day after. Try to do the same when you are trying to bring a van into a originated car dealership type. It's very different. So I think we are a commercial-minded organization. We are trading business to business. That's what we do. We fully understand that our customers need the vehicle to make money. So it's a very different proposition and concept and value that we bring to customers. Making sure uptime is the key word in my world. You know, uptime, that's what we are about to do.
Yeah.
And just to come back to the previous question about the carbon content. I don't know if the people around here in the audience know this, but an urban truck in London will probably generate around this lifetime of 12 to 14 years about 400 tons of carbon operating around here. 400 tons of carbon, one truck, 12 to 14 years. If you are in a country like the UK today with the carbon intensity of the grid, if we move every one of those to electric, it's about 50 to 60% reduction with where we are now. If you take a country like France, where the carbon intensity is different, I'm not going to open the debate about nuclear or whatever, but the carbon intensity is different, it's 80% down. So there is, when we think about, yes, there is a bit more carbon in the battery elements. And it's true that when you build a battery electric vehicle, there is no doubt that from a production perspective, there is a little bit more carbon. It's about 20 tons roughly by battery. But on a total life, let's not focus on a little bit more carbon, which today we are creating into the battery element. Look at the 12 to 14 year. We can take away hundreds of tons of carbon because we are taking away the consumption of oil and gas from the combustion engine. So this is the big thing. This is the big elephant, you know. So let's not try to focus on, yes, it is important. And by the way, we have a lot of initiatives in the group to do also carbon-free steel. So we can do machines carbon-free from a steel perspective. And there is a lot of innovation that the Renault Trucks is part of the Volvo Group. And for those of you who are following us, you can see that the Volvo Group is actually investing a lot of money in that journey, making sure we create sustainable machines also from a from a steel perspective.
Yeah. Do you know, thank you for going through all of that and hearing you talk there and thinking about things I've seen in recent years. It feels like the truck industry, truck manufacturers and others, are much more strident and happy to go on this journey and go on it fast to electrification than, you know, I'm not trying to put all the car companies together, that many car companies are. It feels like if we have to, can't we just keep selling them a bit longer, another 5 years, another 10 years? You know, people don't really want electric vehicles. But it feels like the truck industry is embracing all this change, is embracing this innovation and technology. Why is that? Am I right in that interpretation? And why is that?
Well, I can only say that from a leadership perspective, we have leaders who are leading the way. I mean, Martin Instead, the CEO of the group, Bruno Blanc, the CEO and president of Renault Trucks. I mean, they have constantly on YouTube and posts, they do stuff, they believe in it for real. So they are driving that through the organizations, and we are at the forefront of this. You know, road freight is about 6-7% of the carbon emissions, so we want to really contribute and transform. And it's a big opportunity for us as well. You know, we are an industry. If you ask people around here, I see around the youngsters, what do you want to do for a living? Do you want to work into a truck industry? Most people would think, not sure about that, you know? Yeah. Since I say that to my team, since I'm doing battery electric vehicles, I have 2 boys and I'm a hero now, you know, because I'm trying to decarbonize the planet and help. So I think there's an element of, you know, generation and engagement and bringing a diversity to our industry. So I'm making that industry at the forefront of the transformation. And we are making it happen. And the trucks are not the big problem. The big problem, it was said in the panel before, is infrastructure, is the engagement, is the environment, making sure that we recognize the value. I'll be talking later on another panel, actually, about this, in making sure we recognize these companies who are moving forward, investing, recognizing the value of CO2 for those companies who are reducing their CO2.
Yeah.
Get beyond that, otherwise I'm going to carry on now.
No, that's wonderful. I love what you said about your children, you know, taking pride in what you're doing. And I imagine a lot of people, a lot of you in this room, whatever you're doing, if you're in and around, and I guess inevitably you are, renewable energy, electric vehicles, new technology, etc. It's not just a job. It's not just a career. It's not just something where, you know, this is how you make a living and pay the bills. It's a mission. You are on a mission that then you are proud to be part of, together with, you know, your family and your friends. And it only happens by virtue of people making effort and getting on with doing things. It's not just a wish list. It's what you get up and go to work and do every day. So on that theme and flavor, What do you look for in people when it comes to, what's the kind of key ingredient of this person's going to be successful? Is it that sort of passion that Carlos talks about?
Oh, there's a lot of things, including the passion. But I think you mentioned we have the coolest job as investors, and that's true because we end up working with these people that carry this mission. We call them impact scalers at TDK Ventures. And the reason why is because it's their life's mission to bring positive impact to the world and scale it. And we see venture capital, if done well, to be the impact scalers behind the impact scalers, to help them scale faster with less risk. Kind of an impact scaler squared.
Yeah.
And so when we look at these entrepreneurs who want to build a better future, we typically look for a superpower. What it is that they know that they can do that no one else can. What do they believe in the future? And they have this passion, this grit, this desire to make it happen no matter what. And so you talked about carbon, so I'll give you an example of an amazing entrepreneur called Steve in Sydney in Australia. And what they have done is a direct lithium extraction solution to extract lithium much faster from spodumene. DLE.
Yep.
But what they are doing is they are pushing carbon in to get lithium out.
Ooh.
And so what we realized with the investment is we ended up with an amazing way of getting lithium faster while doing carbon capture. It was like a double bonus.
Wow. Yeah, that's called is that a double whammy?
Double bonus. And the company is called Novalis. So
nice.
it's leads like lithium.
Formidable. I know that in French. Sungkwon, where do you see then the momentum come? We've only got a few more minutes. And by the way, here's a challenge for the three of you. Can we try and finish on an equation? The first panel, Steve from National Grid, finished on an equation, which was, so I'm not saying you have to, but if you can think of one, that would be good. We've got 6 minutes.
I have one.
Oh, brilliant. That's so useful. Thank you. We haven't arranged this earlier, by the way, and that thing with Steve, it just happened. Sungkwon, I'd like to talk again a little bit about, we're talking resilience in supply chains. We have the Paris Accord a few years ago. We've got all these elections that have happened this year, more democratic elections than in a long time. We've got a shift to the right, clearly we have, which brings with it a kind of slowdown, if you like, in the approach to green technology, it would seem. How the hell, if you're in an industry in supply chains, do you respond to these, certainly within democracies, these chopping and changing, slowing down, speeding up, rates of adoption and desire to progress with green tech? How do you manage that as a venture firm?
Wow, that's a very difficult question. Geopolitical issues, political issues, we try to stay neutral. Business-wise, obviously, we try to be friendly with China and US at the same time. And if it's high value and the right direction with Paris Accord, all that, then we stay amenable, and that's why we invested heavily in battery technology and battery production. So we try to be a good ecosystem player and a contributor to the better future of the world.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I can tell you in terms of this panel, I hope, has given you a sense of how do we get resilience in the supply chain. We get it from innovation. We get it from, we get it from looking at things in a different way. You mentioned lithium there. Direct lithium extraction without having to use the hard rock processes, incredibly, carbon intense, brine, evaporation takes years. There's an issue there with water use, water table, all these things. So all of that's good. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, by the way. I don't. I just read a lot. That's all it is. I'd just like to ask a question again about supply chains. Is there any connection between Renault Trucks and Renault Cars? And what I mean by that is, are shared learnings, and I know it's very different businesses, different leadership, etc. But just out of interest, do you liaise? Do you work much together? Do you talk to Luca De Meo at all?
We are actually, and that's most people here will think we are the same thing, but we are actually two different groups. So the Renault Cars sold its truck division in 2001.
Oh, okay.
So since 2001, we belong to Volvo Group, a Swedish company that
Yeah.
you all know, which is then a global truck manufacturer, because Volvo Group does not have any relationship with Volvo Cars either, as the Volvo Cars is, as we know, owned by Chinese people. So we are a truck global player, Volvo Group, and Renault Trucks is one of those, and we operate with global supply chains, which are managed in groups like ours across, central divisions, and we have regional value chains to respond to these topics. And we had a very close to where we live recently. We had something called Brexit.
Oh, I wish you hadn't said
I'm
that
sorry
word.
to bring that word, but that was very close to where we live. That was a logistical nightmare for our logistic supply chains. Close.
Yeah.
So that, again, these things is what we do. We have tariffs, we have more admin, more red tape, more stuff. So we adapt.
Yeah.
We work with the environment we are in. We are flexible. We operate globally in 190 countries. So again, it sounds a bit like, okay, not very difficult, but that's what we do. We have professional people, and we trade analysts, making sure that we stay compliant, respect the laws, and work with what we have.
I'm going to come to you the final question, but just before I do it, thank you for that answer, and thank you for the clarification. And I've got to tell you, I've written down in my book, must do better research. So sorry, I actually knew that, but it just wasn't in my head when I asked the questions. Sorry about that. So Nicolas, please conclude for us, and I'm not trying to, set you up for a fool. What's your equation? You said you've got an equation.
So I have an equation, and you have to answer. And the answer is from not attractive is 1, and 10, I want it today.
Okay.
It's a battery process not using solvent, which has a potential of 50% reduction in CapEx, 50% reduction in OpEx, 50% reduction in CO2. Today it's about 10 to 20%, but it's got the potential for 50%, 1 to 10.
Yeah, it's 10. Obviously it is.
Come on, it's 12. What are you talking about?
68. No.
But this is what AM Batteries is doing right now, one of our portfolio companies, which is not using any solvent to do new type of battery process.
And that's a big issue.
It's a huge issue.
Big issue, which we won't get into because we've only got 22 seconds. But look, I think in terms of answering the question, how do we make supply chains more resilient? You've given some great detail, not answers as such. What you've given is explanations and updates on what you do, how you're investing, who you're investing in, and the sophistication of Renault Trucks. Not part of Renault Cars, by the way. Don't know if anyone knew that, but I can't believe it. I did actually know that. But thank you, because I think, it is the whole idea of this event is to give people ideas, information, inspiration, and a sense of, purpose and what you can do, how you can play your part in all of that. And you've certainly given people ideas for that. So where do you want the queue to form for the discussion about who wants investment? Over there? Yeah, we do it, Chris? Over there. Yeah, we do it over there. Right,
we can do a selfie so that everyone can smile.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Can we give our wonderful panel your appreciation? Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, with the audience, yes. Yeah, can you all smile now, please? Yeah.
Time to smile.
Very good.
One, and this side.